Also, gaming in spite of negative consequences. That young man who's now in Iraq that we talked about, he was failing school. His mother was yelling at him. He regularly had his computer taken away. He had carpal tunnel syndrome. He was getting backaches. But still, he decided that gaming was the most important thing. You recognize that from even an anecdotal appreciation of addiction, that an addict, one of the hallmarks, features of addiction, is that even though there's a lot of negative stuff happening, even though my house is in foreclosure and my wife's leaving me, I'm going to still drink, okay? Well, we see the same behavior in people who excessively video game. Absorbed in a world of imagination and fantasy. So these people become more interested in the fantasy world than they do in reality. And this is simply a feature that dovetails with those other signs. I used to be one of those people. I went to the University of Michigan, and in 1993, I had dabbled in video games earlier in my life, but they were never really that engaging to me. But then they came out with a game called Civilization. Every computer in Angel Hall Computer Center at the University of Michigan had Civilization loaded on it. Well, you started out in the Stone Age, and then you had to get your group of people, you had to advance them, and you had to get technology, you had to get to the wheel, and you had to figure out farming, and then your civilization could advance. Well, I got so hooked that I got carpal tunnel syndrome. I'm going to spare you all the sordid details, but I will tell you that the worst episode that I had was when some students of mine, when I was teaching at Roper School, purchased a game called Age of Empires. Age of Empires is Civilization on steroids. And you also get to do a lot more killing, which I was very fond of. Suffice it to say that in the holiday period of 1998, I had a roommate who was gone. I was by myself. I told all friends that I was going up north for the whole week. And I holed up in my house on my computer, and the longest binge I had was 50 hours on Age of Empires, because I couldn't go to sleep. I had to figure it out. If I just could figure out how to build my walls more strongly in a more strategic way, I could defeat the Japanese civilization that was the menace in that game. You see, I'm a historically oriented person. And so for me, one of the most engaging things about Age of Empires was that I was like I was back in history. You know, I had always admired Hannibal, and I had always admired General Patton, and I had always admired the great generals and leaders of history. Well, in Age of Empires, I was the general. Now, it sounds a little irrational, doesn't it? But all addiction is irrational. It's all irrational if a non-addicted person looks at it. So that was one of the major hooks for me. Okay, we're already in confessions, so I will say that one of the things that, and I don't have a whole lot of time, I don't want to go into my story a whole lot. I would like to, but I don't think we have enough time. But you know, what got me to stop eventually was I had the support of some very good friends, but I had these pangs of dissatisfaction within me, like I was meant to do a lot of different things in my life, and write a book, and be a performer, and write comedy, and all this kind of stuff. And these pangs just became stronger and stronger and stronger. And it was like, eventually I hit bottom. It's like, I'm kind of a loser. I spend my free time gaming, and for whatever reason, at some point, it just came up and bit me, and it motivated me to stop. It took a lot, though. It took, I used to have to go to the chiropractor because when you're, how like there's an ergonomic way to hold a mouse? Well, when you've got the Aztecs and the conquistadors and the Nazis attacking you all at the same time, you lose that ergonomic touch, because you got to fight them back. So it tends to screw up the body a little bit. Luckily, I was blessed with good friends, and they helped me. And I used a lot of different things to keep away from games in an addictive way. And here I am now telling people about my story. Actually, my story could be a whole hour in and of itself, and so I'm going to leave that for right now. But suffice it to say that through a lot of support, I was able to deal with some of my underlying issues. Now let's face it, folks. If somebody's addicted to video games, there's always other, let's call them comorbidities, okay? And we're going to talk about this. There's always other things going on. There are reasons why people prefer fantasy to reality. There are reasons why people want to escape from reality. It's never just, it doesn't exist in a vacuum. It's intertwined with other issues in the person's life. So let's talk about the games they play. Different gamers play for different reasons. There's not one model that encompasses it. Okay, and we're going to go into some of those motivations. Some video games have the right profile for the right gamer. You know, somebody may be a fantasy-oriented individual who wants to escape reality. So here's the game for you. But we're going to get into the nitty-gritty of that right now. Okay, so we're going to talk about the opiates of the gaming world. World of Warcraft. Some people call it World of Warcraft, is one of the terms that gets used. Incredibly addictive. Now, how many of you are familiar with the neurobiology of addiction to some extent? Okay, so basically, without going into a lot of intense, boring detail, basically you have a reward system, right, in the brain mediated by dopamine. And when something's pleasurable, there's circuitry in the brain that wants it to be repeated. Well, in some people, when they find that thing, they can't stop repeating it. There's a compulsion to it for a variety of reasons. So there's a study out of, it's also out of Syracuse University, and if you want to see the book, it's quoted in there. But researchers are starting to examine this, and they're seeing the same cerebral signatures in video game addicted individuals as they are to people who have behavioral addictions, compulsive shopping, compulsive gambling, etc., and substance addictions, cocaine, drugs, etc., etc. So there are a lot of studies that are starting to show the same cerebral signature. Now, obviously, methamphetamine is a lot stronger than World of Warcraft, but for some people, World of Warcraft can be incredibly menacing to a person's life. We're going to go into that a little bit more. How many of you are familiar with World of Warcraft? Does anybody have a child or a spouse that plays? Okay, so let me just give you World of Warcraft 101. Okay, let me just look at the time. Good, we're doing okay. World of Warcraft is a fantasy-based / Dungeons & Dragons style game that has an avatar. Avatar. That's your character. So you could be a night elf, you could be a Draenei, you could be part of the Horde, whatever. You have an alliance and you have a character. That character is your character. When you log in, you play your character. You gain experience points. Guess what? Guess what you got to do to gain experience points? Play a lot. See, that game is particularly insidious because you have to pay a monthly fee. So what does the company that makes World of Warcraft want to do? They want to keep you paying that monthly fee, okay? So World of Warcraft, you have to play a lot to get experience points and to gain in-game currency, gold as it were. Now, when you get the experience points and you gain that gold, you can buy the double-handed force field approved battle axe, and then you've got this great battle axe, and when other people in the game see your avatar come up, it's like, wow, look at that battle axe, and see that there's a status, there's a prestige along with having certain attributes. And you're not going to get that battle axe unless you amass a lot of experience points and a lot of in-game currency. And the only way to do that? Play a lot. Not only that, what happens is in the early levels of World of Warcraft, you get the rewards a lot. Hey, you can get this attribute, you can get that attribute. But then the more experience you get, the longer the periods between reward.